Right, so I'm talking now with Jon Atkinson, who is another atheist. So hopefully the discussion will be a little more jovial than the recent one I had. Um, I'm going to let Jon introduce himself, I think. So, Jon, tell us who you are.
Yeah, conversations with theists tend to not be so jovial. Um, it's not always the case, but quite often. Um, I am an atheist. My earliest memories in life are of going to church, and I was raised as a Protestant, and as soon as I became old enough to reason and think, I contemplated. Many details happened in my life in my teenage years, and I became an atheist because I lost faith, and rather than returning to the church, I simply grew further away from it. There's too many things in the Bible that don't make sense,
Indeed.
or that if you look at it like it's a book written by men who didn't know where the sun went at night, it makes perfect sense. You would not expect the supreme creator who exists outside of time to start a book with in the beginning.
Yeah, okay.
That kind of doesn't make sense, right?
I don't understand how you can
That's
exist outside of time to start with, but anyway.
well, yeah. It's simply theists' attempt to shield their God from observation, or shielding him from analysis or testing, even though Thessalonians tells you to test all things and keep that which is good. They don't. They're very selective in what they read. They accuse us atheists of cherry picking, but cherry picking is precisely the method that they use to determine that God is good.
It's the only way you can maintain belief, though, in the world today where we know as much as we
Right.
do.
Anybody that follows what the Bible says is either going to be judged insane or a criminal and put in jail. You, I mean, to stone your wife to death on her father's doorstep if she's not a virgin. Hmm. Try that. See how that goes for you, right? Uh,
Maybe that's
you
why, in all of the statistics that keep coming from America, maybe that's why there are more theists per capita in prisons than there are atheists. It's because they go around
oh yeah,
stoning people.
that is wow. Uh, that is it's a twofold problem or cause. Uh, the other that's one fact is that theists are more likely to commit a crime because not all of them, but some of them use the caveat I can always ask for forgiveness and everything's cool. So where's the moral accountability? The other issue is that they think that it counts towards their face, towards their looking good, and it helps them when they have to see the probation or the parole board or
Yeah.
it helps them get out easier. Oh, I've changed my whole life around. I've committed my life to Jesus, and
Yeah.
I run a Bible study group, and you know, twice a week, and you know, you're gonna hear every excuse.
Indeed.
So I uh, I was in prison myself. I have to explain because everybody that will watch this video will ask why. Their immediate question.
It was my question in my head.
It's okay. Uh, it, it's supposed to be an inalienable right that you can bear arms in the United States, but this is not true. Once you commit a crime, you're no longer allowed to carry a firearm. I was carrying a firearm. I had lost my driver's license, so I'm riding a bicycle. I have a jean jacket. I have my gun, a small pistol, tucked in my inside pocket of my jean jacket. If you know how a jean jacket is cut, it's the inside pocket. And this guy ran a stop sign and hit me with his car. Pizza delivery driver trying to go fast. He runs over my bike partly. Didn't hurt my bike too much, but it bent the rim by the tire running over the bicycle rim. So I could still ride the bike, but the wheel went thump, 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 thump against the frame as it went around. Problem is that my body flew up on his hood, and my gun flew out, and it stuck between right where his windshield wiper was. So he's there behind the wheel, and he sees my gun, right? So I couldn't, like, you know, I just grabbed it and put it away. I said, "You got insurance?" He goes, "Yeah." So we pulled over on the side of the road. I had just bought some weed from a friend. I'm on my way to my other friend's house, and we're gonna smoke weed. And so I asked the guy, "What's your license like?" He said, "Man, I'm a pizza delivery driver, and if I get one more ticket, I'm gonna lose my license." I felt sorry for the guy, right? I said, "Well, you know, you paid to get my rim fixed on my bicycle, and it's cool, man. Don't worry about it. Hey, you don't get high, do you?" He said, "Yeah, sometimes." So I smoked a joint with the guy. I thought I was being the coolest. I thought I was being the coolest about the whole. I mean, he ran the stop sign and hit me on my bicycle. Okay, so okay, everything's cool. We exchanged numbers. I went my way, he went his way. Well, unbeknownst to me, is now he's late for delivering his pizza. So he hauls ass up the road, and the police see him go by speeding. And they pull him over, and they say, "Why were you going fast?" And he says, "Because there's this big motherfucker back there with a gun, and he threatened me."
Oh,
Yeah, what a bitch, right? So, karma, you know, uh,
well,
anyhow.
you know what they say?
So
No
they
good
charged
turn
me with
goes unpunished.
CCW, carrying a concealed weapon, and aggravated menacing. Rodney Morris didn't have the guts to show up to court and claim that I threatened him, so he didn't show up. So they dropped the charge of aggravated menacing, but they didn't drop the charge of CCW, carrying a concealed weapon, and that's what they sent me to prison for. So I was in prison and I had an epiphany that changed my life. You're surrounded by other convicts, and everybody is making excuses why they're in there. They have every excuse in the world. And I figured it out. My epiphany was it was 100% my fault that I went to prison. I don't agree with the amount of punishment that I got, but it was 100% my fault. I chose to break the law. I chose to carry the gun concealed. It was my fault. I can't deny it.
Mm.
And my life changed literally in that moment. I understand entirely about responsibility, which means that if there is a God who's omniscient and omnipotent, we are not responsible for anything. We are the way he made us, and in the situation that he put us, there should be no guilt. He made us the way we are, and he made the situation the way it is. He's responsible. Even the Bible says so in several places. I mean, who are we to question the artist? I mean, so
I was asked that the other night on a different Zoom call, and my answer is I'm a sentient being with the right to make sense of the world the best way I can.
that's right.
But you are right that God does basically say, I did it. It's me.
Right. I was having a conversation on this subject yesterday with another couple people that don't understand about free will. I said, I love asking these questions. Does the often beaten child have the free will not to flinch when a hand is raised against them? No. We are programmed by our environment and our experiences and our chemistry and genetics and brain topology. We are programmed and we react the way we react because we've been programmed to.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean there's a programmer in the sky, but it means that we are a product of all the things that happened to us that we didn't have any control over. Hence, there's no such thing as free will. However, a philosopher will tell you that it's always best to act as if there is free will because that keeps the world turning. Right?
Indeed. And we have, if you take a completely deterministic stance, part of that determinism will be consequence. Right. So we act as though people are responsible, even though if it is a purely deterministic situation,
exactly,
they're still getting the appropriate input.
Right. Absolutely. Part of the experiences, I watch all kind of videos on YouTube, and you'll see bratty children, spoiled children that are no longer children, that are young adults, and clearly that they've never been told no before. So when a police officer tells them to step out of the car, they say, "No, I'm ignoring you," and they roll their window up. Right? So, and they have to find out the hard way that there are repercussions to that. Well, these are experiences that will affect the way they react next time that they didn't have any choice in. I love the issue of free will because it takes sin right off the table. Sin is a completely, it's a fictional thing. People made it up, just like all the gods from history. People don't realize that. People, the majority of people, I mean, and it's important because currently the majority of people are theists, which means that they craft legislation that you and I have to adhere to based upon their religious beliefs. This is why abortion and same-sex marriage and stem cell research and so many things are a problem.
Indeed. I mean, we're more fortunate, I think, in the UK that it's easier for secular society to thrive. But given that,
how is that possible with the C of E, Church of England?
The Church of England, I mean, I laughably call it the Church of England conservatives at prayer, because it seems to me that, but conservative in this country, well, it sort of does now, but for most of my life wasn't the same as conservative in America. Conservative in America is extremely right-wing by British standards.
Right.
Up until very recently, our Conservative Party was probably what you'd call centre-right. And the Anglican Church is much, much more liberal, I think, than pretty much anything you would find in America, to be honest.
It's historically, I couldn't agree with you more. From my limited experience, the two groups, conservatives and liberals, in America, had tried recently, not at the beginning. The conservative planks in their foundation, in Abraham Lincoln's time, were to the left of what we now consider liberalism. They freed the slaves. They're the ones. However, in it, I think it's due. I really do. I believe, I haven't really done a ton of research on this, but I believe that it is due to efforts to distance themselves from the other party. We're not like them, we do this. We're not like them, we do this. So the left goes crazy left, the right goes crazy right. This is why I've been a liberal, I've been a progressive all my life, and yet it seems now the liberals have lost the fucking thread with this gender thing. He, she, they, them. This is the stupidest thing. If you got a ding dong, I'm gonna call you a guy. I don't care if you had sex with other guys. That's your business. But I'm not going to call you a woman. I'm not going to refer to you as a ma'am or a woman. I'm not going to do it. A pronoun is a pronoun. A personal noun is the name that you're given by your parents. I will adhere to that. That's fine. My name is Jonathan, but I go by Jon. I expect people to call me Jon when I tell them that. If I shouldn't have to tell you that I'm a guy. I mean, if somebody can't tell. But if I right. But if I do, I expect you to use I expect you to use your senses. I expect to not have to tell you that I'm a guy.
I get that, but Can I just put another perspective on this? Thing
Sure.
is quite interesting because it does demonstrate to theists that atheists don't all have the same views. Um,
Right.
there is a video on my channel which I would encourage you to look at. The title is
Sure.
I'm a transparent," and it talks about my relationship with my daughter, who is now my son, and the
Okay.
difficulties that we went through for years trying to come to terms with what that meant. Um, I don't particularly want to make this video about that, but it's not a simple issue. It really isn't.
No, I, I, I just think I think to couch it in phrases that compartmentalize it to a biological issue is wrong. It's a behavioral issue.
Well, it's a gender
If
issue,
you,
and gender is different from sex.
yes, but you can't test for it.
But I think, if I remember rightly, because we've mentioned him before, you're familiar with Forrest Valkai. Forrest Valkai. Oh, I
That
thought you were.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's a biologist and educator. He does a lot with
Uh-huh.
the atheist experience and the line and stuff like that. He explains in excruciating detail to a caller on, I think it's the atheist experience, um, why it's not that simple biologically.
I'm sure. And I hate to say it this way. I don't mean it as a put down or an insult or a slur or anything like that. I'm simply reaching for easy examples and I'm grabbing low hanging fruit. If you steal things from a store habitually, you might be called a kleptomaniac.
Mm.
This is a psychological condition. It's a behavioral condition.
Yeah.
I think that this is the same for every transgender alive. It's a behavioral issue. I don't care if they want to have, for example, your daughter that's not, you said your daughter that's now a son?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Your daughter that's now a son used to be a female, now is a male. If they choose to have sex with other females, yeah, I had to go around the logic bend.
Yeah.
If they choose to have sex with other females, it's a choice. If a kleptomaniac chooses to steal, it's a choice. It doesn't mean you don't feel the urge. It simply means that you have a choice and you have to choose to follow your urges or not.
Okay.
It doesn't even say whether it's right or wrong. I don't, I have no opinion. It doesn't affect me in that regard,
Mm.
except for people want to apply. I teach English.
Mm.
I know what pronouns are and I understand their purpose, right? So this is the issue. Telling me that my English is wrong or in error is to me it's fraudulent. It is not something I'm willing to abide by. If you're a girl and you want to have sex with other girls, don't say But go ahead and have sex with whoever you want. I don't care. But don't force me to call you a man or a guy. That's wrong.
As you can imagine, John, I know
Yeah.
quite a lot of transgender people. Most of them
Yeah.
actually aren't that bothered because they get that
Yeah.
there is that reflection of who people are.
My
I mean, most
my
would prefer if you were to appropriately gender them, but they're not going to make a huge deal out of it unless it's malicious. And it doesn't sound
right.
to me like you're being malicious. The problem is there are some
No.
extremely vocal people who will
Holy
make a big
moly.
deal out of stuff on both
And you
sides. I
see them all
Peterson,
online.
I mean, Jordan
Right.
Peterson made a career out of it, though. It's there on both sides.
Right.
That there are
No,
people who
I
are
get
creating a
that.
fight that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I would assume that this is not a new issue. It's a new issue in the news
Yeah.
or in the media.
Yeah.
It's not a new issue. People, you've had, I'm not going to be vulgar. You've had people that want to have sex with the same sex for thousands of years. Even monkeys do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so uh, it's not a not widespread issue.
In
It's
terms of
it's the
dress as
issue of
well,
the
I mean, if you go back to when was it? 15, no, oh no, 14 something, 1481 or something like that. Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was burned at the stake for heresy. And having tried really, really hard to find a reason to burn her, the only thing that could get her on was wearing men's clothing. And that was the extent of her heresy. The fact that that was a statute tells us that women have been wearing men's clothing, and presumably vice versa, for centuries. Why
right.
else would that be part of the system that they could get her on? They couldn't get her on anything theological except wearing men's clothing.
It, it also it also underlines one of my points of a minute ago about the theists outnumbering us atheists, and because it's almost impossible to get elected to public office in the United States if you claim to be an atheist, it ends up being theists that craft legislation that everybody else has to adhere to.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's not solo to the United States, and everybody else has to deal with it as well. Um, I don't have an easy answer. I have several makeshift answers, but all of them would require a willingness by all parties to accept everybody else the way they are. I'm happy with accepting people the way they are. I refuse to use the wrong word. Other than that, I am happy. I love my fellow humans, all of them, until they opt out of the list, like someone that is a perpetual bigot, someone that is, I don't know, bigot maybe isn't the right word. I'm a bigot for people that are willfully stupid, that are willfully ignorant. I hate them with a passion. If I would unplug their life support to charge my phone, it's really bad.
That's pretty drastic.
Yeah, it is. The world would be a better. Did you hear that? There was this person in prison who got a new charge of murder while in prison because they put a child molester in their cell with them. And they talked about it, and the people in prison don't like child molesters because some of them still got families and children outside that they can't protect anymore.
Yeah.
So if you come to prison and they find out you're a child molester, chances are you're going to get killed very quickly. Well, they got killed very quickly by their bunkmate, and they charged the bunkie with manslaughter, and the cellmate was like, "Yeah, I killed him. He kept talking about being a child molester. I can't have that. I'd do it again." I mean, you know what I mean? Completely, unequivocally proud of the decision that they made to end somebody's life. It made the world a better place. My morality is not objective, it's subjective. It doesn't require God to tell me what's right and wrong. I base my morality on suffering. If my decisions increase suffering, broadly speaking, then they were immoral. If they decrease suffering, then they were moral. And that's it. It's really simple. You know, you can't always get it right. But if you try to get it right every time, nobody can blame you. Nobody. Reduce suffering.
I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to kill anybody, whatever they've done. I just don't. I don't think I have that right. But I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. Actually, the
self-defense.
All morality is relative. I got a wasp in my caravan.
That thing is trying to get you, man.
I know. A little worrying, but never mind. You'll fly around.
Fly swatter
eventually. I don't
get
like
a hat.
Yeah, but if you miss, you just make them angry.
Yeah.
Oh, go away. Go on. I really don't like
I was 10 years old, 9 years old. My cousin, who was home from the army, was next door, had bought a piece of shit bow and arrow. And we were shooting a bow and arrow in the backyard. There was a trash drum, a metal drum, that he had a target set up against, but there was trash inside the drum. And then it attracted some bees, like not yellow jackets, but the fat, fuzzy, black and yellow bumblebees.
Yep.
And I was all the way across the yard, and I shot the arrow at the bee, missed the bee.
That's not
surprising. But apparently the intention was clear to the bee, because he immediately flew directly at me, landed on my neck, and stung me on my neck. I was screaming bloody murder. I'd never been stung by a bee before. My neck swelled up. It hurt like hell. I could not believe the bee had seen me shoot him, tracked the arrow backwards to its point of origin, and come after me in some kind of, honey-based retribution. I couldn't. I just consider it bad luck now. But that bee was out to get me, man.
So it seems.
I'll never forget that. 9 years old.
So maybe
shit,
maybe that was divine retribution, John.
That exactly. Yeah,
You know,
something.
God works in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Have you done
Uh,
any more bees? Have you fired
this
any more
is
arrows at bees?
no.
Well, there
Yeah,
we are.
so it worked, right?
Yeah, that's divine
They
intervention right there.
the Buddhists also say uh karma. They use karma. This is between the Christians with God works in mysterious ways and the Buddhists with karma. It's a way of excusing the unfairness of reality.
Mm.
If things happen to you that you don't deserve, good or bad, then you say karma, or you say, well, God smiled on me, or whatever, right? If you're Hindu, you have another excuse, but it's the same kind of thing. People have been attributing results to these imaginary deities throughout history.
Yeah, indeed.
And since it's always plus or minus, you can't ever prove one way or the other that that's the real cause. They have peer reviewed studies on scientific study, real science on prayer and the efficacy of prayer.
Yeah, yeah.
Prayer is exactly as effective as pure chance.
Unless you know about it. Because if you know you're being prayed for,
Yes,
then your outcomes are slightly worse.
right. Because you think, well, I prayed, I'm good. I don't need to do nothing now. I'm just gonna sit here. I have a I have several links to websites that log parents that killed their children through neglect because of religious beliefs.
Oh, it's just
They
amazing,
it's
isn't it?
terrible. Oh, it's horrible. I do not understand. I do understand, and that's the sad part. That's why the majority of people are theists that craft legislation. Otherwise, religion would be against the law.
Mm,
It is in every case harmful. It's never helpful in and of itself. Not in any way that couldn't be helpful equally from secular means, and it's only hurtful. It's offering promises that's a death cult. I have all these promises that only happen after you die.
I, I don't disagree with you about the nature of religion, but it seems to me that I mean I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist 30 years. I really dislike religion for a variety of reasons, some of which we've touched on, and I agree with everything you just said, except about making it illegal. And if I were a legislator, I absolutely wouldn't go there because I actually think it's important that those who are making the rules accept that not everyone has to agree with them. That's part of my problem with the theists, is that they want
Bank
me to
robbery
join
is
their club.
illegal.
Sorry?
Bank robbery is illegal.
Yeah, I agree. But in terms of
Adultery is illegal.
yeah, in terms of opinion. Now, what I would also say is I don't believe that religion
Uh,
should trump other legal issues. Like, for example, it shouldn't be a defense for the neglect of a child. Nor do I
right.
think that it should be an appropriate and legal reason to mutilate a boy's genitals, take his foreskin away.
Or a young
Not
girl.
accept,
Right.
but it's already illegal for girls.
Uh,
You can't
right.
do that on religious grounds. Certainly not in this country. But you
Not
can
yeah,
take
right.
away a
Depends
boy's
on where you're
foreskin.
at.
Yeah, you can take a
It's
foreskin away, and
sad.
that's child abuse. No, there's no consensus
Absolutely.
there.
I believe I have a couple memes actually. Uh, young children that are 5, 6, 7 years old standing there in church with their hands up and their eyes closed. This is child abuse.
I agree. That's psychological.
This is the start, but you won't. You make cigarettes 18 and older. You make driving 18 and older,
Mm.
unless your parents sign and then 16. Um, they should make church the same way, but they won't do that because the theists are in charge of craft the legislation.
But let's say that they were. Let's say you and I were legislators in this country that we've just made up.
Uh-huh.
And we want to limit religious exposure to adults only.
Uh-huh.
In practical terms, how on earth would you make that work?
Well, I understand your point because it's something along the lines of the original implementation of the seatbelt law in America, which is if they pull you over for something else and then happen to notice that you're not wearing your seatbelt, then they can write you a ticket for it. But they can't write you a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt just by itself if they happen to drive by you and look over and see that you're not wearing your seatbelt. Because some cars don't have are old enough that they don't have a shoulder strap, so you wouldn't be able to see whether or not they're wearing their seatbelt or not. Therefore, it's an unenforceable law unless they find out through other means. And the only way they can do that is if they pull you over for speeding and see that you're not wearing a seatbelt when they walk up to your car. So then they get you for speeding and not wearing a seatbelt. Right? I don't think that the way, to be honest, I don't think that the way forward, because my goal, as I've intimated before, is to eradicate religious belief from the planet. Yes, lofty, I know, but it's a matter of principle. It's a matter of principle. The world would be a better place without believing myth is real.
Well, there I agree.
Um, it allows all our lives. We make plans. We make plans for retirement. We make plans for getting a job or losing a job. We make plans for walking down the hallway to use the little boy's room. We make plans for everything, big and small, and everything in between. The more factual information that we have when we formulate our plans, the more likely our plans have of success. This is a fact.
Yeah.
So the less myth in our life, the better.
I agree.
The sooner we start teaching epistemology in school, in primary school. I don't believe that there is an age too young at which to begin teaching this subject. How do you know what you know?
Indeed.
This is important. I think if we started, okay, back to my original point. The way forward with this to eradicate religious belief is we have to start a campaign that promotes these ideas that will automatically achieve what goals we have. If we teach epistemology,
Yeah.
it's a fact. Less people will believe religion. Less people will believe myth.
Yeah.
How many people have you met in your life that are those conspiracy theorists? And they sound so fucking nutty. It's unbelievable. How do you hold a job with an opinion like that? Is what I ask half of them. And I don't understand. If you talk to your boss this way and told him what you really believed about this, that, or the other thing, I mean, man, I would fire you. Should be out the door so fast you think it was a time warp. I don't understand how they get by with it. But there are people out there that are conspiracy theorists, and half of them would go the way of the dodo as well.
I agree.
Epistemology.
I think you're absolutely right. If we could get people to use a decent set of epistemological tools to really be able to work out what is and is not likely to be true, then yeah, religion would vanish. And I would absolutely love that. But I don't think we have the right to try to enforce it. We just teach it. And that's all we can do.
I would agree. Okay. I don't want to stop anybody from robbing banks unless it affects me. I can understand that, but robbing banks does affect you.
Yeah.
If enough people believe in religion, they will craft legislation that because we're a democracy, you'll have to vote, you'll have to adhere to.
I agree. This is a big part
This
of
is
the
terrible.
reason I do what I do is because British culture is usually about 20 years behind American culture. And what I see in America,
Really?
yeah, in many ways, not always, but we've already got the American religious right having an influence in this country. I don't
I
want to
like
be where you.
Australia. The
Sorry?
the government over in Australia seems fairly down to earth. They
Yeah,
seem very grounded, don't they?
they certainly do. We've actually just got an atheist prime minister, which I like. Um,
that is pretty amazing.
Well, I don't think it could happen, could it, in America? There wouldn't be
No,
an atheist
no,
president.
not
Well,
yet.
I'm sure there have been, but there wouldn't be an openly atheist president. It's probably closer to the
Yeah.
norm. But I mean, I'm very aware. I'm always aware of the idea. What does it feel like to be wrong? And when you ask people that question, well, what does it feel like to be wrong?
It's when I'm wrong, I feel regret, and
No, you don't.
in some case, oh, I do. I
No,
feel
you don't. That's not
shame.
when you're wrong. That's when you've learned that you were wrong and are now
Oh,
right.
oh, yes. When
To
you're
be
wrong, you
wrong
feel
feels
right.
you feel
Yes, that's
right.
true.
And
Yes.
because of that, I do not have any right to impose my opinion upon the religious as long as it's not. I mean, I will stop them forcing me to join their club as much as I can, but I don't have a right to try and force them to join mine. But I would like to teach
Okay.
them how to learn.
That's very egalitarian of you.
I try.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my issue is that because I grew up in America and I used to my mom started dating a guy. I was like 9, 10. So my stepfather. And they've been together ever since, actually, now. But I didn't like him at first, and I didn't want to do things together with the family. And him and my mom went to church 3 times a week, Wednesday night, Sunday morning, every week. And this is where I learned a lot about church and the Bible and religion in general. I grew up a Protestant, and I didn't want to go to church, and often my mother, sometimes she would let me stay home alone, and sometimes she would force me to go to the church with them. Um, it wasn't a completely terrible thing. I got to sit in the very back of the church. I got to sit next to this really pretty girl named Sharon Wilkinson. I known her since one of my earliest memories. The issue is that it was child abuse. Even if it didn't feel like child abuse to me at the time, it was still child abuse telling me this is true and this is true and this is true when they don't know or they can't know that it's true.
Yeah,
this is wrong. If you're a teacher and you teach a child math and you teach them 2 + 2 = 4, you're doing them a service. It may not be a big service, but you're doing them a service. It's a net gain that you're teaching them something that will prove useful down the line at some point. But if you teach them 2 + 2 = 5, I teach English here in Hong Kong. Often, the students that come to me are ones that are having struggles in school here because their English teacher is a Chinese person. The Chinese teacher will teach them the wrong way because they're Chinese and they're teaching them English with a Chinese accent.
Yeah.
Right? So when they come to me, I have to undo some of the things that they've already learned in order to start fresh and explain to them that no, this is wrong, no, this is wrong, this this is right, but you should say it this way, and then we can work from there.
You know what I love about this conversation? I will just little glimpse behind the scenes. We tried to do this once before, and it didn't work at all because my video recording setup didn't work. There was no sound, so we abandoned that. That was much more jovial than this, although we're having a bit of a laugh with this one as well. But I actually prefer this because we're demonstrating that atheists are real people, and we're also demonstrating that there is no atheist doctrine because we've managed to disagree on things and what have you. But what I would like to ask is, what is it? There may be no answer to this. It might just be well, nothing. But what does atheism mean to you, Jon?
It's a philosophy that you can't take things for granted. You really need some kind of evidence to believe in things. This goes back to the epistemological approach. You should require evidence for things, and if you ask a theist why they believe in God, every single time it will be a logical fallacy. Every time. God of the gaps, argument from ignorance, or personal incredulity. Every single time. And this is why I believe epistemology should be taught from an early age. Philosophy should be taught from an early age.
Yeah.
As soon as they're old enough to grasp it, teach them, because this will make the world. Why is it that the foreign countries, some foreign countries, are doing so much better on SATs and scholastic scores than American kids? Because they're concerned with things that are not priorities. They're involved in church. They're involved in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, which are helpful organizations, but almost all of these things are centered around a religion or a religious belief, and I think it's wrong. I believe that it's wrong to instill religion onto someone. Depending on the situation, it is indoctrination or brainwashing or conditioning in the best of cases.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
that's my opinion.
Okay.
It's sad when they're old enough. Why didn't you ever talk about religion? Well, I want you get older and think for yourself and read up on it and do some research and dig into it and make your own decision. I'll stand by you, whatever you decide.
It's interesting that that's actually what many atheists do. It's what I did with my kids. Is that, I mean, I made no secret of the fact that I don't believe, but nor did I make a secret of the fact that many people do. And you can make your own mind up when you're older. And they did, because I also taught them how to reason. So,
The
none of them are, believers in God.
the
Because they
most
don't have
hilarious
what
part,
you're talking
yeah,
about, epistemology,
right, right. There is as much. There's more evidence for Bigfoot than there is for God.
Yeah.
At
Not
least
very
there
good
are
evidence.
several, yeah, not very good evidence, but there is some evidence. There are video clips of Bigfoot walking through the forest.
Hmm.
They're very short, they're very grainy, they're very poor quality, but you can see it's a big hairy animal of some kind. There's
It's
more evidence
interesting
for
though.
the
You never ever see things like that anymore. Now that everybody's got a high definition smartphone.
yeah, right. Or UFOs. Right, exactly.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Do you remember? Because I remember this when I was growing up.
oh
Ghosts
man.
were like they were like sort
Oh
of
yeah.
shaky figures, the sort of figure that you'd get by a double exposure on 35mm film. That was the sort of thing that a ghost was. And then suddenly, about 1990, maybe 95, suddenly they all became orbs.
Yeah, right.
What happened to the figures? Where
Right.
did it go? How did they become orbs? Unless it was just a way to get around the modern technology as it evolved and developed. And I just
Right.
think that's really fascinating that you don't see ladies on stairs anymore.
Right.
You don't
No,
see the grey lady.
absolutely. Right. Yeah, people don't realize how, I mean, back in the day it was wheels within wheels, Ezekiel's wheel. It was the burning bush,
Yeah.
the thunder in the sky. Um
Well, Yahweh started out as a volcano god.
Don't tell any Christian that. They won't believe it. They will not believe it.
Uh,
I
you know,
I I
it's true.
tried to, yeah. Well, we ended up because we don't believe in reasoning or planning using myth. We plan using facts as near as we can determine them to be. This is our ideology, if anything. So as atheists, when we go to engage in a debate with a theist, almost every time we end up knowing the Bible better than they do.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, this is a fact. It's a sad fact, because why would you sell a product that you don't understand?
Well, quite. But that's the thing that I mean. I don't know about yourself, but I mean, I've read the Bible. I've read it cover to cover a few times.
Right.
Um, and that's partly why I'm so critical of Christianity, to be honest, because I've read the Bible. But the
Oh yeah.
majority of Christians that I speak to just let the pastor tell them what to think, which is not the same.
Right. We actually talked about this the other day, and I wish we had that part recorded as well. You're absolutely right. Um, I had a quote, and I couldn't remember who it was from, but I'm paraphrasing. It is, a man doesn't believe what the Bible says. He believes the Bible means what he says, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't learn from the Bible what the Bible says. You learn it from somebody else. Somebody else will tell you
Mm.
what the Bible means. And
A video I did fairly recently, and it's about a young couple who meet in church, they get married, and then they move to a different city because they've found work, or one of them's got a new job, and they try all of these different churches, but everywhere they go, there are things that they don't agree with doctrinally, until eventually they find a church that matches what they already believe, and then they
right,
say, "This church guides us." No, it doesn't.
right,
It just matches
right,
apparent, or
right,
pre-existing beliefs. And that's why there are so many denominations, because nobody is guided by the Bible. They simply find a church
right,
that fits their pre-existing either views or bigotry or both.
right. No, you're 100% correct. This isn't even a matter of opinion. It's a direct observation. All
Yeah,
you
it's
have to do
obvious.
is travel around, and
Mm.
you can see this. You can ask questions, and they will tell you right to your face that this is what they believe, and it's different every. Do you ever play telephone or telegraph in
Ah,
school?
well, we used to call it Chinese whispers years ago, but yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
and you stand in a row, right?
yeah,
The lesson you learn from this practice is that the farther you are removed from the source, the more chance that you have of corruption taking effect to your
indeed.
original message, right? And and
How, how
and
would
and
how
you
would
can't.
how would 40 years of verbal tradition before anybody wrote anything down work in that
I,
respect, do you think?
exactly, exactly, and
Sorry,
it
I'm
is
being a bit
so.
flippant, but
No, no, it's actually more than 40 years, but yeah, it took like several hundred. Are you familiar with Francesca Stavrokopoulou?
no, and I think I'd remember a name like that.
Yeah, you'd think. Uh, she is the professor at of the Hebrew Bible at the university in Exeter.
Right.
And she is an atheist. She quite values the Bible because it is a book of myth, and we can't understand where we came from unless we understand the Bible. And yet she is an atheist. I have a
That doesn't make it. There's no contradiction there for me because it's about the development of culture.
yes. Let me get you a link. Now, mind you, that this is a university professor, and her subject is the Hebrew Bible. That's the first Bible. Moses didn't exist. That's an Egyptian name. There was a bunch of guys with daddy issues. You got to listen to the interview. It is absolutely astonishing to hear her talk about how she values the Bible and yet doesn't value what it says in the way that she does it.
Well,
It's very
send me the link, and
yeah.
when this video comes out on YouTube, I'll link it in the description of the video.
It's there. I sent it to you. I
Oh,
sent it
cool.
to you.
All right.
It's in our chat window.
All right. So if you are
Yep.
watching this video and you're interested in that, the link is below. All right.
Yeah, she is absolutely fantastic. She has appeared on I guess there are several videos of her on YouTube other than, and you know, if you search for that name, it's there's a whole lot of consonants in her last name. But
I'll look forward to trying to decipher it.
yeah, it's great. It
Jon,
is a really informative video. Anyhow.
Jon, I'm conscious I've taken quite a lot of your time, but there is a question I really wanted to ask you, which
Sure.
is, if you were ever to be converted back to any religion, but I'm thinking specifically Christianity, in that hypothetical situation, what would it have taken to convince you?
Oh, this is good. I have this answer. You are not the first person that has asked me this question.
I'm sure we get asked that all the time with atheists. People are always asking.
Right. What would it take to convince you? I'll tell you, because I stay up on technological advance, medical field especially. I tell you what would convert me right now. It may not convert me in 10 years because in 10 years we may have invented a way to do it ourselves from stem cell research or whatever.
Right.
To convert me right now, I need to see someone pray for someone who is missing a limb, a human. I want to see it regrow in front of me. I want to witness it with no medical intervention whatsoever. I will convert today if you can make that happen.
I think you're being
But
very
people,
fair there, Jon.
I'm trying.
You know,
Any God should be able to do that.
but I mean, God regularly heals people just at about the time that the surgeon cuts into them and removes their appendix.
Right. Well, if depending on how you look at it, God's the one that caused the appendix to burst to begin with.
Yeah, but he put the
Right?
surgeon there just at the right time.
That's right. I have two more links for you that they make me cry when I watch them because they show what, okay, they show what humanity is capable of. There was a woman that was in the Boston Marathon, and they had that asshole that lit the bomb off and took the bomb there, and it blew her legs off, right? And Hugh Care, anyhow, they got bionic legs on this girl. She was a dancer before, and she's dancing on her bionic legs. I'm telling you, man, it'll make you weep. It'll make you weep. God let her get bombed, and it took science to fix her.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole bunch of little clips in another video for people hearing for the first time with the cochlear implants, children who've never heard their parents say, I love you, hearing sound for the first time.
That's lovely, isn't it?
I'm telling you, man. It is. I'm emotional. I that's the way I am. I think if there is a God, he's got a lot of fucking things to answer for.
Absolutely. Let me plug another video. It's quite short on my channel. It's called No Fucks to Give. It's only about 3 minutes long. Have a look. It covers those sorts of issues. Yeah, God's got a lot of explaining to do.
He sure does.
Jon, thank you so much. It took a little bit of sorting out and setting this up, but thank you so much for talking to me. I will. I'll
shoot me a link whenever you can.